in this short movie, I'm going to walk you through the steps of color balancing an image that you might have gotten that appears all black, or what is also known as 16-bit imagery. So first let me show you what a 16-bit image might look like. Let's go into a folder with some Worldview 2 imagery that is 16-bit data. Let me double click on this tile and show you what it loads like. And give it a couple seconds here. You can see it's loading down at the bottom of the screen. And it's going to start off as an all black tile. While it looks completely black, I assure you that there is actually data there. So what we're going to use is a tool called Monteverdi, which if you read my article you can download online. It's a free program. Not the most user-friendly programs, but it definitely is effective and gets the job done. So first let me go ahead and open a data set here for you. So you go into File, Open Data Set, and you're going to want to choose your file with those little dots there. Go to my desktop where I have the file saved. You can switch to this button here, and then you can see the file extensions. I'll load my Tif, and you can see it'll switch to the data type for you, and you press open, and here you have your 3 bands load up, so you're ready to take a look at this data and start working with it. So in order to open it in the viewer, you go ahead and click on the layer, the main name here of your file, and then you'll want to right click on it and go to Display in Viewer. And it'll take a couple seconds for it to generate the preview. And once it does, it's going to bring up a window here, or several windows, I should say. One with your imagery in it, and one where you can work with your data. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move over in this reader window here, I'm going to move over to the setup option, and this is going to be where you're going to do your color balancing as well as another slight tweak we're going to have to do. So let's go to the middle of the town here, and it might look a little bit odd to have these blue roofs. Well, if you thought that, you're definitely right. And what's ended up happening here is the channels got reversed. The blue channel is actually band 3, red channel is actually band 1, and then green still is band 2. So once you apply this change, you're going to see what will appear the right roofs, reddish roofs with some nice bright green grass. So the next step is actually color balancing the imagery. But before I jump into that, let me show you a couple of things that might illustrate the article a little bit better. So in the article we talked about 16-bit images and how 16-bit imagery is not recognized by the screen. So let me open up this little window here a little bit. And down here you're going to see this pixel information window. And specifically, I want you to take a look at 2 things here. Here's the pixel value, and that means the raw pixel value of the data, and then also the value displayed, your red, green, and blue values. And this is the same up here in your pixel value, red, green, and blue. So when you hover over these, you can see down there that it's not uncommon to find values that far exceed what an 8-bit image should be, with a top value of 255 on red, green, and blue. So here, let's go back over here so you can see this pixel value. Every single one of these values exceeds the 8-bit limit of 255 for a possible pixel color value. But you can see what's actually happening though is it's taking this and scaling this imagery to view it within 8-bit of 0, 199, and 229. So that's just to give you a little sense of looking at pixels and showing you what I actually meant by 8-bit versus 16-bit. So let's go back to this image and let's start making it look a little bit nicer. When I'm looking at this image, I feel like it's a little too bright in many of these areas, roofs and what have you. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go back into this menu here that we started working with. And what I'll do is I'll zoom to an area in this imagery where you can see a lot of bright colors, but you can also see a lot of green, so that you're making sure you get some true world. So here's a nice bright surface and a lot of green here, so it's a nice place to work. You come back over to this side, this is where you can actually do the color balancing. So there's different options that you can use, Gaussian and all different sorts, square root. I tend to like the results of the linear stretch. And when you work with a linear, you can see here that you have an upper and a lower value to work with. You'll want to move these around and toggle them and see what the impacts are. And just go through very quickly. You can see as you move them what impact they actually have. And as you move these around, you're going to get something more and more pleasing. It's never going to be 100% perfect for every single location, That's something you're going to have to accept, that when you're color balancing an image across a large area, there are going to be some bright and dark surfaces, but your goal should be to try to get it as close as possible. While we were moving this value around, it looked like about 1% stretch was a nice option to give you some intensity in the light areas, but then also not have complete oversaturation. So let's zoom around to a couple locations. You can see that we get some nice color balancing. Yes, admittedly there's some oversaturation, but as I mentioned, nothing's gonna be perfect for every location. You might have to do a little bit of tweaking if you have a specific location in mind where you want the colors exactly right. So now that we've done a little stretching on this imagery, let's actually take and export this to a JPEG file and a TIFF file to show you that the imagery can be exported and be reopened once you go outside of this program. So here's a nice little location that we can work with. It's got a bunch of different features that are interesting to look at. So you can go back into your window where you did your color balancing, and you'll go to export to PNG, and you'll want to say save the full view. This is the full resolution view. You'll want to go OK, and then you can go to your desktop and you can do test1.jpg and it'll export for you. Now it's also exported as a TIFF file, and all you need to do that is you're just changing the different auxiliary ending .jpj as a JPEG and .tif as a TIFF, and it's just saving them out for you. So that's exporting. Before I move out of this program and show you what we created there, I do want to take you to one other thing, and this is the more advanced way of doing color balancing. This is actually stretching the histograms and moving around the individual bell curve that represents all the different colors inside of your imagery. There's a red, a green, and a blue channel, and by sliding these bars at the edge of your histograms, you can actually really start tweaking the color a lot more than you could possibly with those the percent stretches. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, just to show you that it's possible and that you can definitely you can achieve a much better product by doing this than you can with the automated stretches. But again, this is a much more challenging way of getting it done. So as a final step here, let me just go ahead and show you exactly what we created. And here is the JPEG version of what we created, and you can see that it exported those colors really nicely. You could go and create and use this as on your desktop, or print it out and use it on a postcard or what have you. And then here is a TIFF image. Same thing, just a little bit crisper because a TIFF is a little bit higher, doesn't have as much compression associated as a JPEG would. So I hope you learned something in this movie. And admittedly there is one limitation of Monteverdi, in that once you set the colors, there is no way to export this entire image out and resave it. I'm imagining that in future versions of Monteverdi, which isn't really that old, they will modify it to allow for that. But for now, that is one limitation you should be aware of. Thanks for your time, and hope you enjoyed our GFAQ this month.